26 vapers, 16 non-users. Same age, same gym habits. Researchers put both groups on a treadmill and measured exactly how much oxygen their bodies could actually use during hard exercise. The vapers lost, not by a little. Here's the part that should really bother you. Almost every one of them said vaping made them feel more energized before a workout. Sharper, ready to go. Their bodies were telling a completely different story than their brains were. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly why nicotine can make you feel like you're about to have your best workout ever, while your muscles are quietly getting less oxygen than they need. Here's the trick nicotine plays on you. The second it hits your bloodstream, it triggers your sympathetic nervous system. The same fight-or-flight system caffeine taps into. Heart rate goes up, blood pressure spikes. Your brain gets a hit of adrenaline family chemicals. That's a real, measurable physiological response. You're not imagining the buzz. But feeling stimulated and being better fueled for exercise are two completely different things. One is a sensation. The other is oxygen actually reaching your muscles. And that gap between how alert you feel and what's actually happening inside your blood vessels is exactly where this story gets interesting. Because the same nicotine hit that speeds up your heart is doing something to your blood vessels at the exact same time, and it's the opposite of helpful. Nicotine is a vasoconstrictor. That means it narrows your blood vessels. Narrower blood vessels mean less blood and less oxygen actually getting delivered to working muscle. During exercise, that's the exact opposite of what you want. This isn't speculation. Researchers at the University of Pennsylvania used real-time MRI to watch what happens inside blood vessels immediately after someone vapes. A single session, one time, one use, measurably reduced how well blood vessels could dilate. At the same time, inflammation markers in the blood went up. One vape session, measurable vascular impairment before you've even touched a dumbbell. So if your blood vessels are constricting right when you need them wide open, what does that actually cost you in the gym? This is where the treadmill study we opened with stops being an abstract number and starts explaining exactly what regular vapers are experiencing, rep after rep, without realizing why. Here's a fair question. Caffeine is also a stimulant. It also raises heart rate. So why does one get recommended by sports scientists while the other doesn't? Caffeine has been studied specifically for athletic performance for decades, in hundreds of controlled trials. The consistent finding, it genuinely improves endurance output and power output in most people, at moderate doses, before exercise. That's one of the most replicated findings in all of sports nutrition research. Nicotine has never produced that same body of evidence. Not because nobody's looked, because the actual measured outcomes, like the studies we just covered, point the opposite direction. Caffeine stimulation tends to come without the same degree of vasoconstriction working against you the entire session. Nicotine's does. Same category, stimulant. Very different report card once researchers actually measured outcomes instead of just how people said they felt. So if the buzz feels identical, but the actual research verdict is this different, that tells you something important. How something makes you feel in the moment is one of the least reliable signals for what it's actually doing to your performance. Which brings us back to the muscle itself, because feeling energized was never the only thing on the line here. Back to those 26 vapers and 16 non-users. Researchers measured something called VO2 peak, essentially the maximum amount of oxygen your body can pull in and use during intense effort. It's one of the gold standard measurements of cardiorespiratory fitness, the same number elite endurance coaches obsess over. The vaping group scored significantly lower. Same age range, similar activity levels outside the study. The clearest difference between them was nicotine exposure. Lower VO2 peak doesn't just mean you get tired on a treadmill faster. It means every single set at the gym, every sprint, every set of stairs is running on a smaller fuel tank than it should be. Here's the question that actually matters though. Is this just about cardio? Or is nicotine reaching all the way into the muscle tissue itself, changing how it recovers and rebuilds? That's where the research gets a lot more specific and a lot more uncomfortable. Here's where I want to be precise, because this is exactly the kind of claim that gets exaggerated online. That same 26 vapor study didn't just measure oxygen intake at the lungs. It went further, directly measuring how efficiently muscle tissue was actually using the oxygen it received during exercise. The result? Vapers showed measurably impaired skeletal muscle oxygen utilization compared to non-users. Not just less oxygen coming in, less of it being effectively used once it got there. That's a real, human muscle-level finding, not an animal extrapolation. Separately, a controlled study on mice found that nicotine-containing aerosol reduced maximum muscle force by 30 to 40% and slowed treadmill running speed by 8%. And human research on cigarette smoking, not vaping specifically, has found it impairs muscle protein synthesis, the actual process your body uses to repair and build muscle after a workout. So here's the honest version. The human oxygen utilization data is solid. The mouse force data is real, but it's mice. And the direct link to blocked muscle protein synthesis, specifically in human vapers, hasn't been tested yet. That part is a reasonable hypothesis, built on smoking research, not yet its own proven fact. I'm not going to pretend it's more settled than it is. What is settled, though, is what happens after your workout ends, because there's one more piece of this story that has nothing to do with the gym itself, and it might be the most damaging part of the entire cycle. Muscle doesn't grow during your workout. It grows afterward, mostly while you sleep. Nicotine disrupts that. It delays how quickly you fall asleep, and it reduces the amount of deep, restorative sleep you actually get, the exact sleep stage where the bulk of muscle repair and hormone regulation happens. So picture the full cycle. You vape before your workout because it feels energizing. Your blood vessels constrict right when your muscles need oxygen most. You finish training, running on a lower fuel ceiling than a non-vapor would have, and then that same nicotine makes it harder for your body to fully repair what you just broke down because your sleep quality took a hit too. 3 separate points of interference. Same substance, same session. None of this means one single vape ruins your entire physique overnight. Bodies are more resilient than that. But it does raise a genuinely practical question. If you're already vaping, is there anything close to a less bad way to do it around your training? That's worth answering honestly before we wrap up. If you vape and lift, here's the honest, non-judgmental version. The vascular impairment from a single session appears to fade with time, which means vaping immediately before training is very likely the worst possible timing, stacking constricted blood vessels directly onto the exact moment your muscles need maximum blood flow. Quitting entirely is obviously the option with the strongest research behind it. Cardiorespiratory fitness and vascular function both show measurable improvement after cessation in existing research. But if quitting isn't where you're at right now, separating vaping from your training window as much as possible is a genuinely reasonable harm reduction step, not nothing. And protecting your sleep matters more, not less, if nicotine is already part of your routine, because that's the recovery window this whole cycle is quietly working against. Quick honest note, I'm not a doctor. This isn't medical advice. And if you're trying to quit nicotine, that's a conversation worth having with an actual physician who can help far more than a YouTube video can. So here's the real answer to the question this video opened with. Nicotine feels like a pre-workout because chemically, it's hijacking some of the same alarm systems caffeine does. But underneath that buzz, your blood vessels are constricting, your oxygen ceiling is dropping, and your recovery window is getting quietly shortened, all while your brain is telling you it's go time. If this changed how you think about your next pre-workout routine, subscribe. I break down what the science actually says. No fluff, no fear-mongering. See you in the next one.